My daughter-in-law mocked my handwriting on a birthday card, so I stopped writing the checks. She asked where the college fund went. I said, to someone who reads between the lines. My handwriting looks like chicken scratch. Is that really what you're going to write on her birthday card? Clara's voice cut through the morning stillness like a blade. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the soft sunlight filtering through the curtains, a cup of tea cooling beside me. In my hand, a fountain pen trembled slightly, more from age than from emotion, as I finished the last word of a message I had written 100 times before. "Let me rewrite it for you," she said, already snatching the card from my fingers before I could reply. "It's embarrassing. I mean, what if her little friends see this? Kids can be cruel." I looked down at the purple ink still drying on the corner of the card, my familiar loops and slants now branded as something shameful. I said nothing. I've learned silence is often stronger than protest. The card was for my granddaughter Lily, 5 years old that week. I had spent the night before wrapping her gift, a handcrafted wooden jewelry box lined with velvet, the kind I used to dream of having as a girl. I'd tucked in a tiny gold bracelet too. Real gold, not flashy, just simple and dear, like how I thought love should be shown. I'd also planned to include a check, like I did every birthday. Nothing extravagant, just a few $100s toward her future. Every year, quietly, I set it aside. I never made announcements about it. No one asked, no one thanked me. But I believed in doing right, even when no one watched. Clara scribbled something quickly in the card and sealed it without letting me see. Then she handed it back with a clipped smile. "There, much better." I nodded. My hands went back to my tea, which was now cold. I didn't speak of it on the car ride to the party. My son Michael drove us. He was distracted, as usual, taking work calls on Bluetooth and half listening when I mentioned the weather or how tall Lily had grown. At the party, the house was filled with pastel balloons and other mothers complimenting Clara's decor. I was directed to a seat near the kitchen again, close to where the snacks were set up. "They'll call you when it's time for cake," Clara said without looking at me. She was busy adjusting the cake topper, a glittering pink number 5, her manicured fingers moving fast and practiced. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, watching my family through a pain of separation I couldn't name. I was present, but not part of them. Visible, but barely seen. Eventually, Lily ran up, squealing, throwing her arms around my waist. "Grandma, you came!" I knelt down slowly, hugged her tightly. "Of course, sweetheart, I brought you something special." I handed her the wrapped box. She tore it open and gasped when she saw the bracelet. Clara, standing nearby, smiled, not at me, but toward the cluster of other mothers watching. "Grandma's always been good at the old-fashioned stuff," she said. "She even wrote a card. Well, I fixed it up a bit." There was laughter. Small, polite, and yet slicing. That night I sat alone in my room, the wrapping paper and ribbons still fresh in my memory. I took out the checkbook I always kept in the side drawer. I held the pen, but did not write. Instead, I stared at the last check I had written, a donation for Lily's preschool fundraiser Clara never acknowledged. I folded the checkbook shut. That night, I made a decision I had never considered before. I would stop writing checks, stop pretending my presence in their lives had to be bought, validated through numbers. I had mistaken generosity for belonging. I had confused silence for dignity. But when someone takes your silence as permission, it's time to speak, even if it's only with your absence. They wouldn't notice right away. They never do. But when they asked where the college fund had gone, I knew I'd have the answer, and they wouldn't like it. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. I used to think of Clara as the daughter I never had. When she first came into our lives, she was all charm and warmth, bright eyes, quick laughter, soft hands that always reached for mine at family dinners. She called me Mom from the very first month after the wedding, not Mrs. Harper or mother-in-law, but just Mom, like it came naturally to her. And I let it in. Ooh, I let it in. My son Michael had always been quiet, careful with his heart. When he brought Clara home, I saw a change in him, a light that hadn't been there before. I told myself, if she makes him smile like that, then she must be something special. The first time she hugged me, it was in the kitchen, after we baked cookies together for Michael's birthday. Her hands still smelled of vanilla. "You remind me of my mom," she whispered. "She passed when I was 15. I wish she could have met you." That broke me. Maybe that's why I did what I did later. Maybe I saw the hole in her life and tried to fill it, not just with affection, but with the kind of generosity a mother gives without needing to be asked. When Michael and Clara were saving for their first home, they came over for dinner one evening, nervous and fidgeting. They hadn't planned on asking for anything, or so they said, but I could see the strain on their faces when they talked about rising interest rates and their small down payment. That night, after dessert, I slipped an envelope into Clara's hand. "It's not much," I said, "but maybe it'll help you two breathe easier." Inside was a cashier's check, $25,000, 0 cents. My late husband and I had saved it over the years, originally meant for emergencies. I didn't write my name anywhere on the deed. I didn't ask for it to be repaid. Clara cried when she opened it, real tears. She hugged me so tightly I could feel the tremble in her shoulders. "Mom, you don't know what this means to us," she said. That was the Clara I knew, or thought I knew. In the months that followed, our bond deepened. She'd call just to chat, tell me about her day, ask about my plants or my arthritis. We'd go shopping together, just little things, groceries or outfits for Lily, when she was still just a dream in Clara's belly. When Lily was born, I was the first to hold her after Michael. I remember the way Clara looked at me that day, tired but glowing, and said, "She's going to be so lucky to have you, Mom." I was already setting money aside then, $50 here, $100 there, quietly, methodically. I opened a separate savings account in Lily's name, but never told Clara or Michael. I just wanted to build something solid for her, something that didn't need announcements or acknowledgments. Every winter, I bought her coats. Every spring, I sent money for her swim lessons. When Clara's car broke down after Lily turned 2, I handed over the keys to my old sedan. It still ran well, and I didn't need much. "Oh, Mom, you're a lifesaver," Clara said, smiling from behind the wheel as she adjusted the seat. But then, slowly, subtly, the tone began to shift. The phone calls became shorter, the hugs more polite. Mom became Michael's mom when she spoke about me to others. I noticed it first at a play date when she introduced me to another mother as, "This is Michael's mom. She watches Lily sometimes." Sometimes. I brushed it off. Maybe she was tired. Maybe it was stress. But then came the comments. Passive at first, then pointed. "Thanks for the help," turned into, "It's great that you're still able to contribute." When I handed over a check for Lily's ballet tuition one day, Clara nodded without looking up and said, "That should cover the next term." Great. No more thank yous, no more hugs. One afternoon, Clara mentioned Lily needed new clothes for preschool. "There's a sale at the mall this weekend," she said casually, stirring her coffee. "You might want to swing by, size 4T. I blinked. "You mean you want me to go?" "Well, you always do," she said with a shrug. "And you know her size is better than anyone." It wasn't a request, it was an expectation. That's when it began to dawn on me. All those gestures I thought were love had become duties. And duties, when repeated without recognition, begin to feel like servitude. Still, I kept giving. I told myself, it's for Lily, not for them. Children shouldn't suffer because adults forget kindness. But the truth is, I missed the way Clara used to look at me. With warmth, with respect. I missed being seen as someone who added value to their lives, not just as a backup wallet or unpaid babysitter. The final straw came a few weeks before Lily's 5th birthday. Clara called, brisk and businesslike. "We're booking a party venue," she said. "It's $600, 0 cents to reserve. Do you want to send your part this week or next?" My part? I sat there, holding the phone, feeling the words coil in my stomach like something sour. I sent the check. But it wasn't the money that hurt. It was how effortlessly she had turned generosity into an invoice. That night, I took out the family photo album. I turned through the pages slowly, pausing at the image of Clara and me baking cookies, the way her arm curled around my shoulder. I traced her smile with my fingertip and wondered if it was ever real. Maybe it was, once. But some people don't stay who they were when they needed you. Some people change, not all at once, but in degrees, until the version of them you loved is just a shadow, polite and cold. And now, that's who Clara was to me, a polite, cold shadow of the daughter I thought I had. "You live alone? You don't need that much money." It was said casually, with a smile even, as if it were a joke, though the message underneath was sharp enough to draw blood. Michael had brought it up over Sunday dinner as we sat in my modest dining room. He was slicing his roast chicken, not even looking at me when he said it. Clara nodded along, sipping her wine. You could simplify things for everyone, she added. I mean, if something ever happened, God forbid, it would be such a hassle with probate and all that. I raised an eyebrow. What are you saying? Just that, Clara said sweetly. It makes sense to consolidate things now. Maybe put the house under Michael's name, or even Lily's if you want to set her up early. It's all family, right? I smiled. That small practiced smile I had learned over decades, the kind that doesn't show teeth, the kind that hides more than it reveals. I'll think about it, I said. But I didn't have to, because I already had. This wasn't the first time they'd suggested such a thing. A few months earlier, Clara had asked about one of my accounts, the one I used to help with Lily's tuition and other small expenses. It might be easier if we just handled it, she'd said. One less thing for you to manage. Manage. As if I were doddering and forgetful. As if I hadn't balanced a household on one income for 20 years after my husband passed. As if I hadn't raised Michael on careful savings and quiet sacrifice. I didn't answer then, just nodded. But I remembered. I always remember. There was another time, during Thanksgiving, when Clara asked about my will. She dressed it in pretty language. Said it was only because she worried about my peace of mind. We just want to make sure everything's organized. You know, for Lily. For the future. For the future. That phrase had started to haunt me. Because every time they said it, they weren't thinking of my future. Just theirs. Still, I stayed silent. Until one birthday. Lily was turning 5. The same birthday where my handwriting had become a point of ridicule. The same birthday where Clara snatched the card from my hands with that thin smile and said she'd fix it. That day had already begun with cracks. I arrived at the party to find that my seat was once again in the kitchen area, the place for coats, plates, and platters. Other guests sat at the long decorated table, laughing, raising glasses. Clara greeted me with a brief side hug. Can you help set out the drinks? We're running a little behind. I did. Of course I did. Because I knew if I said no, she'd flash that wounded look and murmur, I just thought you liked helping. When the cake came out, I wasn't called forward. I watched from the archway as Clara and Michael stood behind Lily, singing loudly, surrounded by their friends. Someone snapped a photo, a perfect picture of a perfect family. I wasn't in it. Later, as people mingled and the kids opened gifts, I handed Clara the card and gift I had prepared. She looked down, barely glanced at the handwriting before muttering, Still with that pen, huh? I said nothing, just smiled. My hands were shaking slightly, but I tucked them behind my back. Your handwriting is like chicken scratch. Are you going to write that on my birthday card? She opened the card, read it silently, then laughed, a small, high laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Your handwriting is like chicken scratch, she said in Vietnamese, thinking no one else would understand. Are you going to write that on my birthday card? She didn't know I still understood every word, even the ones said under breath. And then she took it from me, the card, the moment, the dignity, and rewrote the message herself. It's better this way, she said. Presentation matters. That was the moment. The moment I knew I wasn't seen as a mother anymore, not even as a person, just an accessory, a source, a signature. I stayed through the party, I smiled for the guests, I helped clean up, carried trash to the bins outside while Clara texted on her phone and Michael took a call. Then I went home, quietly, alone. That night I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat at my desk, opened the drawer where I kept my savings ledger and checkbook. I looked over the account I had kept for Lily. The balance was modest but consistent, built from birthdays, holidays, and random Tuesdays when I thought, she might need this someday. I took out a note card. With the same fountain pen Clara had mocked, I wrote a single sentence on thick paper. To those who read between the lines, the value will always be clear. Then I folded it, slipped it into the checkbook, and placed them both in my safe. Clara thought I needed nothing. That I lived simply out of necessity, not choice. That because I didn't spend extravagantly, I must be clinging to things I no longer needed. What she never understood, what she never bothered to ask, was that what I held on to most wasn't money. It was memory. It was intention. It was a kind of love that didn't need approval. And now, that love had drawn a quiet line, one she wouldn't see. Not yet, but one that would change everything. I stopped writing checks that day. It wasn't a grand decision, and I didn't make a speech. I simply sat at my desk, where the old checkbook had lived for years, and slid it into the bottom drawer. I didn't lock it. I didn't burn it. I just put it away. The next morning, I drank my tea slowly and let the quiet sit beside me. I knew what I'd done, or rather what I'd stopped doing. The check I usually mailed at the start of each month for Lily's dance class, I didn't send it. The one I would have slipped into Clara's purse at church for Lily's school lunches, it stayed folded in my wallet. And the automatic transfer I had set up from my savings account to theirs, just to help with groceries, canceled, quietly, no warnings. 2 weeks passed before Clara noticed. She called mid-morning. I remember because I was pruning the roses on the porch, hands still in gardening gloves. "Hi, Mom," she began, too sweet, too slow. "Just wanted to check. Did something go wrong with your bank?" I paused, hearing the undertone. "No," I said calmly. "Why do you ask?" "It's just, we didn't see the usual transfer this month. Michael thought maybe you changed something." "I did," I replied. "I'm reviewing my finances. Just making sure everything's in order." There was a beat of silence. Then, "Oh, okay. Is everything all right?" "Everything's just fine, Clara." And it was, for me, but not for her. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head, trying to connect dots she hadn't even noticed before. For years I had given freely, quietly, no requests, no reminders, just support, offered as naturally as breath. There was the time Lily needed a new pair of glasses. Clara had sent me a text with a picture of the frames, no words, just a price tag. I sent the money the same day. Then there was Lily's summer camp. "Mom, you're so generous," Clara had said back then. "We know it's a bit much, but it's an amazing experience. We wouldn't ask if we didn't believe in it." But they never really asked. They assumed. There were groceries when Michael lost a client, car repairs, a new washer. Clara once sent me a photo of their broken fridge with a sad emoji and nothing else. I wired $800, 0 cents that evening. I remembered every dollar, not because I needed credit, but because they never gave it. Over time, my giving stopped being a gift and became a given. Not "thank you, Mom," just "Mom will cover it." But now Mom had stopped. Michael called a few days later. His voice was awkward. "Hey, just checking in. Everything okay over there?" I smiled. "Fine. How about you?" "Good. Clara said you're going over your finances?" "That's right." He hesitated. "Do you need anything? Help with the computer or—" "I don't know." I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. "I've been handling numbers longer than you've been alive, son. I'm just reorganizing, prioritizing." There was another silence. Then he said, "Okay, well, let us know if you need anything." That was the end of that call, but it wasn't the end of the whispers. Clara didn't confront me directly again. She's too practiced for that. Instead, she spoke through Michael, or more often, near him, within earshot. I stopped by one afternoon, unannounced. I brought over some banana bread and a little toy Lily had left at my house. As I stepped inside, I heard Clara from the hallway, her voice low, but not low enough. "Your mom's been acting different. She's always been private, but now it's like she's keeping score." Michael mumbled something I couldn't make out. "Maybe it's her age," she said. "I mean, she's always been proud, but what if she's slipping a bit? Forgetting things?" I didn't say anything. I walked into the kitchen, set the bread down on the counter, and smiled like I hadn't heard a word. Because that's what people like Clara count on, that you'll smile, that you won't make a scene, that your silence is submission. But mine wasn't. Mine was a ledger. For every time she rolled her eyes at my gifts but cashed the check, for every time she changed my words in front of Lily, for every time she smiled at my face and questioned my worth behind my back. She had mistaken my generosity for gullibility, but I wasn't a fool. I was just a mother. And now I was a mother with boundaries. A week later I received an email. Not a call, an email. From Clara. Subject line, "Just a thought." Inside was a cheerful message peppered with emojis and exclamation points, suggesting we sit down as a family and talk about long-term plans. For Lily's education, for the house, for what matters most. She even included a spreadsheet labeled Shared Future with columns for contributions, goals, and projected needs. My name was at the top of every contribution row. I closed the email. That evening I wrote a letter, not to Clara, to myself. I wrote out every moment I could remember where love was traded for obligation, every time my giving became invisible, every time I said yes when I should have paused. And then I wrote this: from this day forward, my love will remain, but my money will follow only gratitude, not guilt. I folded that letter and tucked it into the drawer with my checkbook. No one else would read it, but I would know. And that was enough. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was folding laundry, nothing fancy, just towels and soft linens that still smelled of lavender. The phone rang once, twice. I didn't rush to answer it. Clara's name lit up on the screen. I knew this wasn't a courtesy call, not after what I had stopped doing. "Mom," she said sharply, skipping pleasantries. "We need to talk." I stayed quiet. She dove in. "We checked the college fund for Lily." "Ah, so that's what this was about." "It's not where it should be," she snapped. "Actually, it's way off. You said you were setting it aside, every year." I didn't respond right away. I placed the last towel in the basket and sat down slowly. "I did set something aside," I said, calm and firm. "Then where is it?" she hissed. "Where is the money, Mom?" "You promised us. You promised Lily." Her words tumbled over each other, panicked, accusatory. The shift from us to Lily was fast, telling. "You said you'd take care of her education, that you were helping with the future. So what happened?" I paused, letting her words hang in the air before I answered. "I gave it," I said. "To who?" Her voice rose. "To who?" I took a breath. "To someone who reads between the lines," I said. "Not just someone who knows how to count the zeros." There was silence. Then a sharp intake of breath, not pain, not sadness, rage. "What the hell does that mean?" Clara shouted. "Is this some kind of game? You think this is funny?" I didn't flinch. "No," I said simply. "You're punishing us." "Punishing Lily?" "No," I cut in. "I'm protecting Lily. From entitlement." Clara was seething now. I could hear her pacing. "You think this makes you noble? You think you're teaching us some kind of lesson? You lied, Mom. You said you'd provide for her future." "And I did," I said quietly. "Then where's the fund? Tell me. Where is the money?" I stood up, walked over to the small safe I kept in the study. "Gone," I said. "Reallocated? To who?" "You don't know her," I said. "But she knows gratitude." "Are you serious right now?" Clara screamed. "You gave Lily's college money to a stranger?" "Not a stranger," I replied, opening the safe. "A girl who writes thank you cards in her own handwriting, who visits without needing something, who once looked at me like a person, not a purse." Clara was breathless on the line. Then her voice returned, low and dangerous. "You're insane." I smiled. "No," I said. "I'm finally clear." And I hung up. Then I reached into the safe and pulled out the sealed envelope. Inside was a cashier's check, made out to a young girl named Ellie, a cousin's daughter I'd only met twice but never forgotten. When her mother passed, Ellie wrote me a letter, a full page of trembling script. She thanked me for sending flowers, even though we weren't close. She'd remembered I'd once complimented her singing at a family reunion. "It meant so much," she wrote. "Not many grown-ups see kids that way." She was 14 then. She's 17 now. Quiet, bright, polite. No one in the family really saw her. But I did. Last Christmas, she sent me a handmade card, a drawing of a little cottage with flowers in the window. Inside, she wrote, "You make me feel seen. Thank you for believing I matter." That card stayed on my mantel for months. I folded the check into a new envelope, addressed it carefully, and placed it in the outgoing mail. Ellie didn't ask for a college fund. She didn't expect anything from me. That's exactly why she deserved it. I knew what Clara would do next. She'd tell Michael. He'd call, confused, torn between his mother and his wife. There would be accusations, guilt, maybe even legal threats. But they couldn't undo what had already been done. Because some things aren't written in ink or digits. Some are written in behavior, in choices, in the way people treat you when they think you have nothing left to give. That night, I sat by the window and watched the sunset behind the garden. The phone buzzed again. I let it ring. I had made my decision, and it was final. It started with a casserole. Clara arrived one Sunday afternoon with a pan of something too rich and too creamy, a dish she knew I couldn't stomach since my gallbladder surgery. But she placed it on the counter with a beaming smile, kissed me on the cheek and said, "We just wanted to spend some time with you." That "we" included Michael, of course, who trailed in behind her, silent as ever, carrying a bottle of wine I would never open. They didn't come often anymore. Not since the checkbook had gone cold and the college fund had disappeared without fanfare. But here they were, full of saccharine charm and polite inquiries. We sat in the living room. Clara folded her legs under her neatly and leaned toward me. "You know, Mom," she began gently, "we've been thinking." Dangerous words, I thought. "About the future," she continued. "About making sure everything is secure? Protected?" I sipped my tea. "Protected from what?" She smiled. "Not from anyone in particular, just from the unknown. You know how things can be, courts, taxes, confusion. We just want to make sure your wishes are followed." "I already have a will," I said. Michael cleared his throat. "Yeah, but it's been years, hasn't it?" 17, I replied, not missing a beat. Clara gave a practiced little laugh. "Right. That's practically ancient in legal terms. It might not reflect your current intentions, especially with Lily growing up so fast." There it was, the pivot. "It's really about protecting the family," she said again, "ensuring what you worked so hard for stays where you'd want it." "And you think I don't know where I want it?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Of course not," Clara rushed to say. "We just think it could be helpful to revisit, maybe even talk to someone we know, a trusted attorney. Michael's friend, actually." I smiled and nodded. "Sounds reasonable," I said. "Let's revisit." Their faces lit up. Clara reached over and touched my hand. "That's wonderful. It'll give us all peace of mind." That night, I made 2 phone calls, not to Michael's friend, but to my own attorney, Mr. Whitman, a man I'd known for 20 years, someone who had handled my husband's affairs when he passed. The second call was to Ellie's mother. By the end of the week, my updated will was signed and sealed. Every cent, every account, the house, the land, all of it was to go to those who had shown care without condition. Lily would receive a trust fund, dispersed by an independent fiduciary, to be used strictly for her education. Ellie would receive the bulk of my savings. And my house? That would go to the local women's shelter, the one I had volunteered with, quietly, for 10 years. Michael and Clara were named in the new document, of course, but not as heirs, as witnesses to an old woman's choices, and witnesses, as the law sees them, receive nothing. I didn't tell them. Not yet. I wanted to see if they'd ask again. They did. 3 weeks later, Clara brought it up during brunch, feigning concern as she passed me a slice of dry toast. "Have you thought about that will, Mom?" I nodded. "It's taken care of." "That's great. Did you go through Michael's guy?" "No," I said. "I have someone." She paused, the knife in her hand hovering above the butter. "Is it someone you trust?" "Absolutely." Michael said nothing, just sipped his coffee and looked out the window. That afternoon, I walked them out to the car. As they got in, Clara leaned out and said, "Thank you for listening. It means a lot." I watched them drive away, my heart steady. That evening, I was watering the flowers along the side of the house when I heard their voices through the open window. They didn't know I was near. "She said she handled it," Michael murmured. Clara sighed. "She probably just updated some old document from the 90s. Don't worry, she's not thinking clearly anymore." I froze. "She's always been sharp," Michael said, though his voice lacked conviction. "She's slipping," Clara snapped. "You saw how long she took to answer about the trust. It's only a matter of time before she gets confused about everything." I turned away from the window, my hands clenched on the garden hose. Slipping. Confused. Funny how people label you incapable when you stop giving them what they want. I went inside, pulled the envelope from my safe, the one with the notarized will. I held it for a moment. Just held it. It was heavy, but not with paper. It carried years of love, of silence, of knowing looks, of watching the people you raised morph into something colder than strangers. I slid the envelope back into the drawer and locked it. Let them think what they wanted. I had never been clearer. The invitation arrived in an envelope lined with gold. Clara had even embossed it with my initials, M.H., in delicate cursive across the front, as if she thought fancy paper could erase the weight of years. "You're invited to Margaret Harper's 75th birthday celebration." For Lossie. Impersonal. But I smiled nonetheless. They were planning a party, A big one from the looks of it, and I wasn't naive. This was less about celebration and more about presentation. A soft PR campaign. "See how well we treat her," it said between the lines. "Look how much we love our matriarch." I could see Clara's hand in every detail. The hotel ballroom, the caterer's name in bold type at the bottom, the RSVP number that didn't belong to my son but to her personal assistant. I was a guest at my own birthday. But I went, not because I wanted to bask in attention, but because I had my own reasons, and a message that would not go unheard. The room was full when I arrived, about 40 guests, most of them distant family, some friends I hadn't seen in years, and more than a few Clara had invited for her own social clout, women in pearls and men in cufflinks, laughing over wine they hadn't paid for. Clara greeted me at the entrance, arms wide. "You look beautiful, Mom," she gushed, air-kissing both cheeks. "That color really suits you." "Thank you," I said evenly. I wore navy blue, dignified, unbothered, and my mother's brooch pinned to my collar. I always saved it for moments that mattered. Michael stood behind her, giving me a small smile, his eyes tired. He didn't speak much these days. I often wondered if the silence was shame or simply habit. The evening unfolded in a well-rehearsed rhythm, toasts, courses, polite laughter. I watched Clara glide from table to table like a hostess in her element, her smile precise, her tone practiced. Then came the cake, a towering creation of cream and roses, wheeled out to applause. Clara took the mic before I could react. "Everyone," she called. "Let's take a moment to honor the woman who's held this family together through thick and thin with grace and strength." She turned to me, eyes gleaming. "Mom, thank you. Thank you for always loving us, for giving, supporting, and being the heart of this family. We're so grateful." She gestured toward the guests. "We all are." Applause. I stood slowly, taking the microphone she offered. Her smile lingered, confident, waiting for me to echo her sentiment, to play the part. I looked around the room. Faces I loved, faces I tolerated, faces that had only learned my name recently. Then I turned to Clara. "I've been thinking," I began, "about the things we give and how we give them." The room quieted. "For 75 years, I've given many things. Love, time, money, recipes, patience, and yes, a few birthday cards, written in handwriting that some might call chicken scratch." A chuckle rippled through the crowd, unsure. "But I've come to realize something," I continued, voice steady. "It's not what we give, but how it's received that matters." I let my eyes fall on Clara. Her smile faltered, just slightly. "I've been blessed to know what true gratitude looks like. It doesn't always come from blood. Sometimes it comes in the form of a handwritten note, a quiet thank you, a child who sees you not as a wallet, but as a person." I reached into my handbag and pulled out a sealed envelope. "This," I said, "is a letter and a gift for a young woman who once wrote to me without expecting anything in return. She reminded me that dignity doesn't come from wealth, it comes from being seen." I turned to Ellie, seated at the very back, humble in her blue dress, eyes wide. "This is for you, Ellie." I walked over and placed the envelope in her hands. She clutched it with trembling fingers. "It's enough to pay for 4 years of college. Full tuition, room, books, everything." The room gasped. I turned back to face the crowd, my voice soft but sharp as a needle. "I love those who can cherish even my crooked letters, because in those letters I left pieces of my heart." Then I looked directly at Clara. "And I've learned not everyone deserves them." Silence. Stillness. Clara stood frozen, her smile now a mask she couldn't hold up. A flush crept up her neck. She blinked rapidly, as if unsure how to reclaim control. Michael looked down at his hands. Ellie burst into tears, and I pulled her into a hug. "That's what family feels like," I whispered. I returned to my seat, the room still stunned, the candles on the cake flickering quietly. No one sang. Later, as the guests trickled out, Clara approached me. "That was dramatic," she said, voice low. "No," I replied, "it was honest." She clenched her jaw. "You've embarrassed Michael." "No," I said again, "you've silenced him. I just gave him back his voice." She said nothing more. Ellie came to me before leaving. She held the envelope like it was made of glass. "I don't know what to say." I smiled. "You already did. Years ago, in a little card you made yourself." She nodded, eyes shining. That night, I returned home alone, but not lonely. The silence wasn't empty. It was earned. The house is quieter now. Not empty, no, never empty, but full of something different. Peace, maybe. Or the absence of expectation. I wake when I please, make tea the way I like it, tend to my little garden of roses and mint, and write. Most mornings, I sit at the kitchen table with a notebook open in front of me. I write longhand, even though my fingers are stiff and the pen shakes sometimes. It doesn't matter. I'm not writing for anyone else. These words are just for me. The phone rings less often. That used to hurt, but now it feels like freedom. There are no more requests for money, no more veiled suggestions about family responsibility. No one drops hints about inheritance or trust funds or house deeds. They all know now where everything went. Or rather, to whom. I hear bits and pieces from Michael. He sends the occasional photo of Lily, growing taller and more aloof each year. Clara doesn't call. I don't expect her to. Our chapter ended with that birthday party, closed like a book returned to the shelf. But Ellie writes. Every month, without fail, she sends me a letter. Real letters, ink on paper, with doodles in the margins and pressed flowers between the folds. She tells me about her classes, her dorm, the snow and winter, the late-night talks with her roommate about life and the future. She writes like someone who sees the world and wants to understand it. And one day, she visits. It's spring when she arrives, unannounced, with a small bouquet of violets from campus. She hugs me like she means it, helps me bring in the groceries, and insists on making tea. Then she pulls out a piece of paper, folded neatly, and says, I brought something I wrote for one of my classes. It's about you. I nod, and we sit in the sunroom, the windows open to the scent of rosemary and rain-soaked soil. She begins to read. Your handwriting leans, like your spine does now, curved by time, not weakness. Your loops are wide, your E's small, your T's never quite crossed, but every stroke speaks. Every word carries intention. Your letters aren't perfect, they're alive. My professor asked us to describe the most beautiful thing we've seen this semester. I said, my grandmother's handwriting. She writes with ink that trembles but never quits. Each line, a memory. Each smudge, a story. Each page, a quiet kind of love. When she finishes, her voice catches a little. I sit still, letting the words settle inside me like seeds. And then, for the first time in a long while, I smile, fully, openly. Thank you, child, I say. I still remember how to write, even when no one wants to read. She nods, eyes glassy. We don't speak for a while after that. We just sip our tea, watch the light stretch across the room, and let the silence speak for us. Because some things don't need to be said twice. And some letters, the kind written from the soul, never fade. If you've ever been dismissed, if someone made you feel like you were too old to matter, remember this. Your handwriting might shake, but it still speaks, and gratitude can never be faked. Share your story if you've ever been overlooked or found your voice when no one expected you to. Don't forget to subscribe to Grandma True Stories for more tales that hold you, haunt you, and remind you. Wisdom doesn't shout, it remembers.